She raised him like her own flesh and blood. But when money got tight, he threw her out without a second thought, never knowing she was the one person who could have changed his life forever. Margaret Ellis wasn't born rich. She was a retired school librarian who lived a simple life in a modest home on the edge of town. She never had children of her own, but when a scrappy little boy named Tyler was left at a foster center near her church, something inside her shifted. He was 5, angry, afraid, alone. The other families passed him over again and again. Too difficult, they said. But Margaret saw something else in him, not just pain, potential. So, at 57 years old, she adopted him. She taught him how to read, how to work hard, how to look people in the eyes when he spoke. She packed his lunches, attended every school event, even when she had bad knees and a tighter budget. She didn't have much, but she gave him everything. Over the years, Margaret watched him grow into a tall, sharp young man. But something had changed. The closer he got to adulthood, the more distant he became. By the time he turned 28, he had moved into her house with his family. Margaret barely recognized the boy she once raised. Margaret didn't mind sharing her home. But suddenly, it felt like she wasn't part of it. Kayla would roll her eyes when Margaret offered advice. Tyler stopped including her in family dinners, and soon, whispers turned into arguments. "Why can't you just move into one of those senior apartments?" Kayla said one evening. Tyler didn't speak up for her. He just looked at the floor. Margaret stayed quiet. But inside, her heart cracked. Then one morning, she came home from the market to find her belongings in boxes. Her room had been cleared out. "We're getting married soon," Tyler said. "We need space. You'll be fine." Margaret's lips trembled. "You're kicking me out of my own house." "It's not like that," he said coldly. "We'll help you find something, cheap." She looked at the boy she had rocked to sleep, fed through fevers, prayed over every night, and realized he was gone. Without another word, Margaret picked up her bags and walked out. But what Tyler didn't know was that Margaret hadn't just left. She had taken something with her. You see, Margaret may have lived modestly, but she had a secret. Years ago, when her sister passed away unexpectedly, Margaret inherited $9.5 million from the sale of land the family didn't even know was valuable. Instead of changing her lifestyle, she quietly invested, saved, and continued to live simply. She had one goal: to leave it all to Tyler. She never told him because she didn't want him to love her for money. She wanted him to become a man on his own, to appreciate struggle, to value humility. But that plan had backfired horribly that very morning before she was forced out. Margaret had removed the documents, bank records, bonds, and keys to the private account tucked away beneath a false floorboard in her closet. She rented a quiet apartment near the edge of town and disappeared. At first, Tyler didn't care. He and Kayla threw a small wedding and began their lives, spending freely with what little savings they had. They believed they were building their future without Margaret, but things didn't go as planned. Kayla lost her job. Tyler's startup failed. Bills began stacking up. The house needed repairs. Loans were denied. And the more stress piled on, the more Tyler began to feel a growing emptiness he couldn't explain. One evening, after another fight with Kayla, he wandered into what used to be Margaret's room. It was still empty, cold. He sat on the floor, suddenly overwhelmed by guilt. He remembered the late nights Margaret stayed up, helping him with homework, the way she clapped when he graduated, even louder than anyone else in the crowd. The time she sold her car so he could attend summer camp. He tried to call her. No answer. He wrote emails. They bounced. He even drove by the library where she used to volunteer. No one had seen her in months. It finally hit him. He hadn't just pushed her out of the house. He'd pushed her out of his life. Then, one day, a package arrived. No return address. Just a simple note on cream paper in a familiar hand. Dear Tyler, asterisk, I once dreamed of leaving you everything I had not, just my money, but my love, my values, my heart. But I realize now, the true gift was never in the inheritance. It was in how I raised you. I hope one day you become the kind of man I believed you could be. With love always, Mom. Inside the envelope was a single key on a bank statement. Tyler stared at the balance. $9,543,200.87. His knees buckled. For the first time in years, he cried. Not because of the money, but because of the love he had thrown away. He spent weeks searching, calling, writing letters, until finally he found her. Margaret sat on a bench, feeding birds at the same park where she used to take him as a child. He walked slowly toward her, broken, ashamed. I don't deserve you, he said. She looked up, and for a long moment said nothing. Then she patted the bench beside her. Sit down, she whispered. And he did. They talked for hours. She didn't yell, she didn't scold, she just listened. And when the sun dipped below the trees, Margaret said the only thing he needed to hear. I forgave you before you ever left the house. Sometimes the people we take for granted are the ones who've held us up the longest. And sometimes what looks like an ending is just the beginning of redemption.